Hey everyone, welcome to another What Has Joe Been Knitting This Week kind of episode. Let's just start off very quickly with finished objects. Obviously, the sweater I'm wearing right now, as in the last video, I was still working on this. I did manage to get it all finished, so the back and the sleeve are done. And I got it all seamed up. The collar here, I'm trying something interesting. It was a V-neck, try to do a shawl collar, but I do like playing around more with doubled up collars. So I'm going to tinker with this a little bit more. This is just my rough draft, so to speak. But the pattern, this came out, it's very comfortable. I thought the sleeves were going to be a bit too tight because I have bigger arms. But they're not. They actually fit correctly, and even the color work here isn't tight on the sleeve. So that's good and nice and comfortable, and the length is good. So next thing that we have, socks. Ta-da! Well, I have two of them, but it's easier to hold up one. I had a slight sock emergency come up because some of mine, died. So I found some of my vintage socks. I'll go ahead and put the information down below with what I'm working on, what book I'm working through, and what the name of this pattern is. It's a very nice little lace pattern, as you can see right there. They're very long, so they may fall more into stocking category actually. Not quite knee-high, but very, very close. The next thing is in terms of works in progress. So this is the start of the Bryophyta cardigan, and which is me just kind of walking you through the pattern for this one here. I've worn this one before. It's really comfortable. I need some more cardigans because, it's winter and it's cold. And I get cold easily. So, while I was doing that, I figured I would show you guys how I do this. I got the ribbing for it done. I will be getting some more of it done this week and filming. Again, filming and editing. When it's done correctly, looks absolutely effortless. Spoiler alert. There's a lot of effort involved. There really is. And I have no idea what I'm doing. So, it's a learning curve for everybody. So I'll be getting some more of this done and hopefully up and out to you guys along with the actual pattern itself. So, that's the work in progress. Upcoming plans, I'm going to have another set of socks, probably in purple, because I need to use that yarn up. And so then I have one other thing that's like an acquisition / gift. This is from my partner's dad, which is the Vogue knitting book from the spring/summer of 1959. I love looking through some of the older vintage magazines, not just because I prefer to knit in vintage styles, because they tend to be, it's just an aesthetic preference. It's not a judgment if you don't like to do that. But some of the ads and things like that are just very interesting to me. And I'm flipping through here. You can, some of this is just so painfully 50s. They have knitting machines. And in fact, actually this has some patterns, the 2 men's patterns in this entire book. There's only 2 of them, and they're both done on the knitting machine. So unfortunately, I will actually not be able to, I'll have to translate those if I'm going to make them. But this is pretty cool because it goes into, there's lots of people selling labels, but then it goes through a quick thing on how to knit. Very nifty. We have sizing guides, and it turns out that I wear a vintage size 16, sort of. So that's pretty interesting. But the other thing to keep in mind is that many times when people talk about vintage or historic, they bemoan the fact that they're not size inclusive. Well, that's not entirely true. Patterns for people who are larger do exist. They have existed the whole time because people who are larger, frankly, have always existed for as long as people have existed. Now, you may not see that in certain vintage magazines, and this is where we're going to get into something that I call an assumption of knowledge. The writers of patterns or anything else, part of them is that they're designing for themselves, and they send it in. But the other side of it is that there's an assumption that you're going to know how to size this up. You know how to knit, you know how to crochet, you know how to sew. In fact, some of the patterns I found from like the 30s and 40s, they literally look like you've taken a sewing pattern and then just knitted pieces to match the sewing pattern pieces, and then stitched them together. They're assuming that you know how to size this stuff up. They assume that you know how to add in an extra inch or how to lengthen a sleeve, so they don't necessarily always tell you that. If you're looking at these, you are essentially in the club of people who make their own clothes, so you would know how to modify that. So that's what I mean by assumption of knowledge, that there's a certain amount of knowledge that the writers of these things assume that you have. So they're not going to bother explaining it to you, much in the same way I would not explain to you, like if I were to ask you to go take my car down to the corner store and pick up a 10-pound bag of ice. I'm not going to explain to you what a road is, because I assume you know that. You will get in a car and you will drive on a road to go to a business that is in theory on a street corner. So I wouldn't explain to you what city blocks are, because I assume you know that a corner store is normally on the corner, and that you're going to go in and hand a person pieces of paper and or coins, little metal discs, for a bag of frozen water that weighs approximately 10 pounds. See, there's all that stuff I didn't tell you. And it's the same way with a lot of the patterns, is that they're just assuming you know, so they're not going to tell you. And this gets really prevalent, like, the further back in time you go, they'll just be like, well, you sure already know how to do this. Like, why am I telling you stuff you already know? Anyway, that's my little rant. The point that all this comes back to is, in here for measurements, the sizes here for women's clothes range from a 31-inch bust up to a 48-inch bust. So even within Vogue from 1959, we're at a 48-inch bust. Interestingly enough, the men's are less size inclusive because they only go up to a 44-inch bust. I'm just rambling. But I wanted to go ahead and show you guys what's going on. Like I said, I'm going to be working on the Bri-Fida sweater and probably making some more socks. So that's what's up. And learning how to edit. Because editing is hard. It's much harder than it looks. Kind of like gymnastics. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Have fun and make stuff. Bye.